Good afternoon, I'm Erica Schumann, and this is WATT News, powering up your headlines at high voltage. In today's news, harmony is clearly absent in the Central African Republic. An elected official is entrenched in scandal, and a local group attempts to raise funds for a noble cause. But first, we shed light on ballot blocking in India. Authorities have detained more than 600 Kashmiri residents in a crackdown on suspected separatists ahead of voting in a general election in India. Indian Kashmir elects only 6 members of India's parliament. Voting is being held over several days in the rest of regions so security forces can better guard the polls. Hostility extends even further into the Central African Republic. A spokesman for peacekeeping forces says 2 people were killed in an attack of more than 1,300 Muslims escaping violence in the capital. About 20 trucks departed the city and were headed for 2 towns near the border with Chad. The convoy was to take the Muslims to safety in the north of the Central African Republic after months of ongoing sectarian fighting. One U.S. official hands over his opinion on sending arms to Ukraine. Former Republican presidential nominee Bob Dole said that the U.S. should send weapons, including tanks, to Ukraine to help it resist Russia's move on its territory and to send Russian President Vladimir Putin a strong message. The 90-year-old Republican Party icon and former U.S. Senate Majority Leader said Putin has sort of sized up Democratic President Barack Obama and concluded that he's not a strong enough leader. This brings us to the Pulse, where I channel my views on your news. Please note the upcoming opinions are not necessarily those of WATT or its affiliates. Aggressive military involvement should not be enacted in the Russian and Ukraine conflict. To begin with, if America were to get involved militarily, tensions would further escalate not only in Eastern Europe, but here at home as well. Russians and Russian allying Ukrainians would take their protests and anger one step further if they felt they were fighting a force as formidable as the U.S. In addition, domestically, after 2 wars, one in Iraq and one in Afghanistan, Americans are weary of aggressive foreign policy. Even more so, how can we enforce peace by sending over weapons of war? Instead, we can focus on terminating Russia's actions and intervention in Ukraine through an economic lens. Tougher sanctions, not just on the top 1% of Russia's oligarchy, need to be enforced. The current sanctions are just not strong enough. We could also establish a temporary trade embargo with Russia and get Europe on board as well. This could drastically damage Russia's growing oil sector. However, no solution can be found until we've come up with a peaceful solution to the issue at hand. This concludes the Pulse, surging into your national news. The Supreme Court refuses to impose a war on words. The Supreme Court appears to be highly skeptical of laws that try to police false statements during political campaigns, raising doubts about the viability of such laws in more than 15 states across the country. Justices expressed those concerns early and often on Tuesday during arguments in a case challenging an Ohio law that bars people from recklessly making false statements about candidates seeking elective office. An elected official finds himself on the other side of the law. A congressional campaign that already was promising to be tightly contested became even more contentious when incumbent Republican U.S. Representative Michael Grimm was charged with evading taxes, news that voters in his Staten Island district met with mixed feelings. Grimm was charged following a 2-year investigation that initially focused on his alleged attempts to bypass contribution limits. Switching into your local news, an advocacy group fights to preserve a piece of Detroit's legacy. A group trying to save a slice of the factory west of Detroit raised $7 million, but it needs $8 million and has until Thursday to make that happen. If the Save the Bomber plant campaign fails, a piece of U.S. history will be lost forever. The Save the Bomber campaign wants to separate and preserve more than 150,000 square feet of the plant and convert it into a new expanded home for the Yankee Air Museum. From honorable initiatives to a disgraceful discovery, when police searched a Muskegon warehouse on Western Avenue, Sean Taylor and Robert Housley took ownership of their share of 28 marijuana plants. The West Michigan Enforcement Team Drug Unit determined that the 2 complied with Michigan's medical marijuana law. Shooting a goal into your sports update, the Detroit Red Wings ultimately were not tough enough. It's the second time in 3 years the Wings have exited the playoffs in the first round. Storming into your weather forecast, cloudy skies with high chance of rain showers throughout the week. That is all the time we have for today. Thank you for tuning in to WATT News, your headlines at high voltage. I'm Erica Schumann reporting, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow. Thank you.